Professor Zill's gelatinous form quivered with emphasis as his 7-eye stalks scanned the classroom of alien younglings. And that, class, is why you should never, under any circumstances, attempt to pet a Terran dog without explicit permission. His eyes swiveled to ensure every student had absorbed his warning. A tentacle rose from the back row. "But Professor," the student protested, "I heard Terrans let their children sleep with these dogs. How dangerous could they possibly be?" Zill sighed, his primary mouthpiece puckering with frustration. "Ah, Blur, always the skeptic. Tell me, would you cuddle up with a Georgia Axian acid spitter?" Nervous tittering rippled through the room, a chorus of alien clicks, whistles, and gurgles. Blur hesitated and lowered his tentacle. "I thought not," Zill continued, his sarcasm oozing as thick as his viscous hide. "Now, let's move on to today's topic: Terran educational institutions and their bizarre customs." Before he could continue, a piercing shriek interrupted the class. Half of the students immediately ducked for cover, while the other half shifted into defensive stances. Zill, however, simply sighed, accustomed to these interruptions. "MS. Daniels, would you kindly explain to the class why you've once again decided to assault our auditory organs?" Sarah Daniels, the only human in a classroom full of aliens, flushed with embarrassment. "Sorry, Professor. I just got an alert that my little brother broke his arm during recess back on Earth. Apparently, he fell out of a tree while playing Lava Monster with his friends." The classroom fell silent, except for the soft hum of universal translators struggling to convey terms like broke his arm and Lava Monster to the bewildered alien students. Zill's eye stalks drooped with concern. "Great Galactic Council. Is he all right? Should you return to your home planet immediately?" Sarah waved away the concern with a smile. "Oh, he's fine. It's just a green stick fracture. He'll be back to climbing trees in no time." The professor's gelatinous form rippled in confusion. "Did you say wrestling his friends? As in physical combat for entertainment?" "Well, yes," Sarah replied with a shrug. "It's just roughhousing. All kids do it." A collective gasp swept through the room. Blur's tentacles wrapped tightly around his desk, while another student emitted a high-pitched keening noise. Zill struggled to maintain his composure. "MS. Daniels, perhaps you could enlighten us about the activities Terran children engage in during their recreational periods." "Oh, you mean recess?" Sarah's eyes lit up. "Sure. It's the best part of the day. We get to run around, play games, and blow off steam between classes." Zill probed cautiously. "And these games, they involve falling from great heights and engaging in physical altercations?" Sometimes Sarah grinned. "There's tag, where you chase each other around and try to touch someone to make them it. Or capture the flag, where two teams try to steal each other's flag while defending their own territory." "Oh, and dodgeball," Zill interrupted, his primary mouthpiece dropping open in horror. "You throw projectiles at each other intentionally?" "Yeah, it's fun," Sarah said enthusiastically. "It builds reflexes." The Cynthian student in the front row fainted, slumping onto her desk with a soft thud. Zill's form quivered in dismay. "MS. Daniels," he began, voice strained. "Perhaps you could explain this Terran playground equipment?" "Oh, sure. There are swings, slides, and monkey bars." "Monkey bars? Monkey bars?" Blur asked, tentatively. "They're metal bars high off the ground that you hang from and swing across with your arms," Sarah explained. "They're great for building upper body strength." The class descended into chaos. Some students emitted distressed pheromones, while others huddled in small groups, whispering frantically. Zill raised his appendages, attempting to restore order. "Please, students, remember your xenobiology training. Terrans are uniquely resilient. What seems dangerous to us is merely recreation for them." A timid voice from the middle of the classroom spoke up. "Professor, is it true that Terrans engage in these activities to prepare for war?" Sarah burst out laughing. "War? No way. It's just for fun and exercise." Zill's eye stalk swiveled toward her skeptically. "MS. Daniels, surely you must see how these games mimic combat scenarios. Projectile avoidance, territorial conquest, pursuit, and evasion tactics." Sarah paused, realization dawning. "Huh. I guess some of our games do kind of simulate battle strategies." An uneasy silence fell over the classroom, broken only by the soft whimpers of the more sensitive species. Zill cleared his throat. "Well, class, it appears we've stumbled upon an important cultural insight. What we perceive as dangerous combat training is, to Terrans, a normal and enjoyable part of childhood development. Sarah raised her hand. Professor, if you don't mind me asking, what do young aliens do during their free time at school? Zil blinked his multiple eyes in surprise. They engage in quiet contemplation, of course, or participate in harmonious group singing. The more athletically inclined might engage in non-competitive levitation sports. Sarah looked bewildered. That's it? No running? No climbing? No competitive games? Absolutely not, Zil exclaimed. The idea of encouraging younglings to engage in potentially injurious activities is simply not done. Sarah slumped in her seat, a wistful expression crossing her face. Man, that sounds boring. Blur raised his tentacle again. MS. Daniels, if these recess activities are so important for Terran development, how do you manage here at the Galactic Academy without them? Sarah grinned mischievously. Oh, I have my ways. There's an anti-grav chamber in the physics lab that makes for a great substitute for monkey bars, and you'd be surprised how much fun you can have in the botanical gardens if you're creative enough. Zil's gelatinous form quivered with alarm. Miss Daniels, please tell me you haven't been engaging in unauthorized use of academic facilities for recreational purposes. Sarah's innocent whistle fooled no one. The professor sighed deeply. I believe we may need to revisit the Terran safety protocols. In the meantime, class, let's move on to a less distressing topic. Who can tell me about the mating habits of the Andromedan slime molds? As Zil turned to the holographic display, Sarah caught Blur's eye and winked. The tentacled alien flushed a deeper shade of purple, embarrassment and excitement mixing visibly in its alien biology. Later that day, as the twin suns of Zon 7 began to set, casting an eerie green glow across the Academy's sprawling campus, a small group of alien students gathered in a secluded corner of the botanical gardens. They huddled around Sarah, their eyes or equivalent sensory organs wide with anticipation. Okay, guys, Sarah whispered, her eyes glinting with mischief. Who's ready to learn how to play hide and seek? Blur's tentacles wriggled with excitement. Is this the game where we conceal ourselves and attempt to avoid detection? Sarah nodded. That's right. But remember, no using your natural camouflage abilities or pheromone cloaking, that's cheating. A collective groan rose from the group as several aliens reluctantly disengaged their camouflage mechanisms. Now Sarah continued, Zix 427 will be at first. They'll count to 100 while the rest of us hide. When they're done, they'll try to find us. The last person found becomes it for the next round. Got it? The aliens nodded eagerly, their various appendages and sensory organs quivering with a mix of excitement and trepidation. As Zix 427 began counting, its bioluminescent leaves glowing with each number. The rest of the group scattered. Sarah watched in amusement as her alien friends awkwardly navigated the unfamiliar concept of hiding. Blur wedged himself behind a large pulsating fungus. His tentacles curled tightly to avoid detection. A Mercurian gas dweller named Whisk tried to blend in with a cluster of floating spore pods, while Glix, a silicon-based lifeform, attempted to pass herself off as a particularly angular rock formation. Sarah stifled a laugh as she shimmied up one of the garden's towering crystal trees, finding a comfortable perch among its glowing branches. From her vantage point, she could see the entire garden and her hidden friends. As Zix 427 finished counting and began the search, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the absurdity of the situation. Here she was, light years from Earth, teaching a group of aliens a game humans had played for centuries, a game that, as Professor Zil had pointed out, mimicked hunting and evasion tactics. One by one, Sarah's friends were discovered. Whisk gave himself away with a poorly timed sneeze, scattering spore pods everywhere. Glix was found when Zix 427 tripped over her rock disguise. Blur lasted longer but was ultimately betrayed by a single quivering tentacle. As the game progressed, Sarah noticed something remarkable. Her alien friends, initially clumsy and unsure, were quickly adapting. They were learning to use their environment to move quietly, to think strategically. Without realizing it, they were developing skills that went beyond a simple childhood game. Several rounds later, breathless and giddy with excitement, the group collapsed in a clearing. Their laughter, a symphony of clicks, whistles, and otherworldly sounds, echoed through the garden. That was exhilarating, Blur exclaimed, his tentacles waving joyfully. I've never experienced anything like it. Glix's crystalline structure vibrated in agreement. I found myself calculating optimal hiding locations based on searcher movement patterns. Is this a common cognitive exercise for Terran younglings? Sarah grinned. We don't usually think about it that way, but yeah, I guess it is. You're learning to predict behavior, use your environment to your advantage, and work under pressure. Whisk's gaseous form swirled thoughtfully. It occurs to me that these skills could be quite valuable in many professions, perhaps even in diplomatic situations or emergency response scenarios. Sarah laughed. I never thought about it like that. We just play these games because they're fun. Zix 427's leaves rustled softly. Perhaps that is the true genius of Terran development. You disguise crucial skill-building exercises as enjoyable recreational activities. None of them noticed the pair of eyes, Professor Zill's eyes peering at them from behind a luminous shrub. He had followed the group, intending to stop whatever dangerous Terran activity, MS, Daniels had coaxed her classmates into. But as he observed the game and its aftermath, Zill found himself re-evaluating his assumptions. These students, representing vastly different species from across the galaxy, were bonding over a shared experience. They were developing skills that could serve them in their future careers, and most importantly, they were beginning to understand the Terran perspective in a way no textbook or lecture could convey. As Zill slipped away, his gelatinous form quivering with suppressed excitement, he began to formulate a proposal in his mind. Perhaps it was time for the Galactic Academy to reconsider its stance on recess. After all, if a simple game of hide and seek could yield such positive results, what other Terran recreational activities might benefit their interstellar students?